So I will go ahead and reconvene this meeting of the WJCC School Board and ask someone to certify closed session, please.
Madam Chair, I certify to the best of each member's knowledge the Williamsburg James City County School Board, while in closed session, discuss only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements as stated in Virginia law, and that only such public matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. And can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
And Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. All right, then we will move on to announcements and superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. About 100 leaders across WJCC schools kicked off the school year by enthusiastically giving back to our community. We worked side by side with area organisations serving those in need. It was a joy to serve, and we are grateful to partner with just a few of our local organisations in making our community better. And we're planning on having a very short video to show you, which is about to appear any moment now. Madam Chair, I think it's the air conditioning that's affecting the video as well this evening. So we'll wait another moment, and if not, we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's circle back on it.
We can maybe, can we watch it later too?
We could absolutely watch it later. We'll leave it for now, but it was a beautiful video of everybody out serving in the community, and hopefully we'll show it to you at another time.
If it comes up, if it's ready later, we can put it in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That includes my very short announcements this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Heron. All right, then we will move quickly on to review the fiscal year 2026 budget calendar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, Ms. Bowen, Director of Finance, will be presenting the budget calendar as Ms. Ewan is not here this evening. Welcome, Mrs. Bowen.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Heron. For your consideration this evening is the proposed budget calendar, thank you, for fiscal year 26. The timeline stays the same from year to year, with the CIP budget process beginning in October and ending in December, and then the operating process starting in January and ending in May. Some of the key dates in the process are the presentation of the CIP committee recommendations on October 1st, presentation of the superintendent's proposed CIP on November 12th, a joint meeting with the James City County Board of Supervisors and Williamsburg City Council about the CIP on December 6th, and the school board adoption of the capital improvement plan on December 10th. Then in January, we'll move into the development of the operating budget. Beginning with the budget workshops prior to the regular January board meetings on January 7th and the 21st, February 18th will be the initial presentation of the superintendent's proposed operating budget. A joint meeting with the James City County Board of Supervisors and Williamsburg City Council is proposed on March 14th. March 18th will be the school board's approval of the operating budget in order to forward to our funding partners by April 1st. And May 20th will be the projected date of adoption of the operating budget after receiving funding information back from James City County and the City of Williamsburg. The proposed calendar with dates is attached to the agenda item for your review, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from board members on this proposed calendar? Friends on the screen? Any questions? No. Does not look like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 5.02, review authorization to permit city-county use of school buses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Annually, we bring this item to the board in case someone wishes to use our transportation, and Mr. Snipes is going to present the item this evening.
Good evening, School Board Chair, School Board members, and Dr. Herron. Tonight's proposed agenda item supports Goal 6 of the strategic plan is being brought for your consideration is the review and authorization to permit the city and county the use of school buses under State Code 22.182. Periodically, WJCC provides and receives requests from the transportation from the City of Williamsburg and James City County. Sometimes and many times that transportation request is due to Parks and Rec requests during the summer and throughout the year, and that's what the majority of those requests are. Those costs associated with the use of school buses by the city and county are paid for by the appropriate governing body and do not accrue to the school division. And tonight, the superintendent recommends that the school board review this authorization to permit the use of school buses and be prepared to vote at the August 20th, 2024 meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. Any questions? Mrs. Donner, Mr. Hosang, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
5.03, review request for a proposal for pre-K centers.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We're very pleased to begin to move the beginning of the process for constructing the pre-K centres forward, and Dr. Keever is going to present this item this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Herron. As she mentioned, we are entering the final stages of design work on the pre-K centers. In fact, we hope to bring to the board in early September a design update from our architectural firms working on that. The agenda item this evening is for you to review and hopefully approve at the next meeting a contract for construction management services, which is an essential component of the process when we build buildings. We went out for RFP through the procurement department with the county. That process closed in the middle of June. We reviewed the respondents and are recommending that we enter a contractual agreement with MBP, which is a local firm who has done some work for Williamsburg, James City County in the past, and we've been particularly pleased with their efforts. The information on the scope of service that they provide through construction management is included in the board item as well as the associated costs. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Keever. Are there any questions for him from the board on this? Green people, no?
No.
Okay. All right. I think
Thank you.
that's it. Do we have the video? Do we want to?
Oh man, I'm sorry. I can do it.
I mean, we don't have to. I'm just checking in to see if it's. Thank you very much. That was worth the wait.
Absolutely, thank you.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to see so many different organizations getting some help and many, many smiling faces. That's wonderful. So we will move on to item 6.01, information on completed capital improvement plan projects.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, Mr. Snipes is going to give us an update on all capital improvement projects completed within the last year. This is something we do annually for the board and give you some pictures of what things looks like, and then we put it on the website for community information as well. Mr. Snipes.
Good evening. Each year, the Capital Improvement Plan Committee meets to review potential projects to include in the school division's overall budget. Subsequently, the superintendent and staff develop and recommend a capital improvement plan for school board review and adoption. Upon school board and funding approval, WJCC schools operations staff coordinates and oversees projects completions. Operations staff tonight will provide the school board with an update on the status of completed CIP projects. Before beginning, I would like to thank members of the County Purchasing Department, Linda Hodges, Jessica Yost, Kitty Hall, and others, and our Supervisor of Facilities and Capital Projects, Jim Falzone. Without their diligence and collaborations, these projects will not have come to fruition. Our annual update to you includes projects that were completed the previous summer and an update about any approved and proposed future projects. Estimates provided for any projects in years 2 through 10 are placeholders and may change because of natural economic forces like inflation, labor shortages, or supply chain issues. Approved in the fiscal year 23 included a budget of $130,000 for a walk-in freezer at Matthew Whaley and $144,000 for carpet installation. In addition to the city's annual Architectural Review Board requirements, we've noticed that the cooler costs have increased over the years due to increased costs of installation in the interior and rising stainless steel costs since the pandemic. Matthews Whaley cooler was installed for $156,846 and supports one of the division's 7 CEP schools where all students eat free. The refurbished carpet installed at a cost of $139,925 invited the new and returning patrons into the school year 23-24. Restroom refurbishments at Toano and Clarabelle Baker were approved in fiscal year 22 and 23 respectively. Budgets for those $386,000 and $343,000. Both projects included fresh coats of paint, new lavatory units, and partitions. Each project was completed on time. Some of the changes at the Toano, for the Toano restroom refurbishment, increased those costs by about $7,000, and they were replaced 2 deteriorated floor drains that increased the cost. Approved in fiscal year 23 CIP with a budget of $130,000 and an installation cost of $144,000 was a walk-in refrigerator at James River. Again, as part of our division replacement cycle for all walk-in refrigerators, and James River is also one of our community-eligible provision schools where all students eat free.
Silly question, but this is pre-installation, right? Are they standing outside?
They're outside now.
They're out. Oh, really?
Yes.
They don't get installed inside?
No, they're outside. They're outside refrigerators. So if you go around to the rear of James River where the kitchen is located, that's where this was located.
Okay.
And at Matthew Whaley, you probably can't see it because of the Architectural Review Board requires us to paint it and put bushes around it and things that were required to blend into the architecture of the city. But yes, they are there currently. Approved in the fiscal year 23 CIP with a budget of $491,000 was our refurbishment at Laurel Lane. Laurel Lane staff and students returned to new tile and a repainted interior for the school year 23-24. Our contractors were able to complete the improvements for $513,251. Again, a change order to replace the floors in 2 rooms were a change in the original scope. So we added 2 rooms, which increased the cost. Approved in fiscal year 24, the tennis courts at Lafayette were resurfaced. The project's budgets were $610,000 and final expenditures totaled $505,093. Centennial contractors worked diligently over last summer, which allowed our students, staff, and community to use this for the school year 23-24.
Snipes.
Yes.
Can you talk about the lighting at tennis courts? I had a question from someone at a grocery store about why there's not lighting at our like high school tennis courts, and even though we improved it, like we resurfaced it, but we don't have lighting because it's the county who does the lighting, right?
I could not tell you the reason why we don't have lighting at our tennis courts. At the present time, we can ask, but we typically don't have lighting on our courts.
I think where there's a lot of use, the county has provided lighting, like for example, the fields at Hornsby and some other places as well. And then if we needed the lighting, we've actually purchased mobile lights at one point for Lafayette football and other venues as well. It probably is more of a county expenditure than a division expenditure, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Dr. Heron is correct. In some of our schools, like Matoka, there's a lot of their lighting because of Parks and Rec and the facilities used by the community more often.
Thank you.
Forgot one. Approved in the fiscal year 22 budget with a budget of $1,620,000 and final expenditures of $1,542,661. We take pride in the partial refurbishment that included tower replacement in worn areas and painting in selective areas at War Hill High School. Listed on the screen are projects that we're currently working on this summer of 2024, and we hope to provide you an update on these projects about the same time next year. In our last slide, these projects will be coming forward in the next year's CIP, which are listed here. As mentioned earlier, those CIP recommendations come to you somewhere around the 1st of October. The most notable being the construction of the pre-K space at Clarabelle, Baker, and Norwich. And as a reminder, refurbishments and replacement projects at Blayton, Hornsby, and Laurel Lane, and the turfing of Cooley Field were removed from the county's adopted budget, but will remain in future CIP recommendations. And those items in red were removed from the CIP and were not funded.
Okay, I think Mr. Riffle had a question from the previous slide.
Yeah, we didn't include the Berkeley orchestra room on this slide.
That's not a capital improvement project.
For what reason?
It was not included. It's not part of a capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan is brought forward every year. That was part of a project that was brought forward as a response to a maintenance condition at the school.
Okay, so we won't get a presentation on this. We won't be able to celebrate that we did this at all. I mean, you just spent $90,000 on it, right? I mean, it's like,
Right.
Yeah,
that was a repair at the school that was not included in the capital improvement plan.
Thank you.
Yes, but it will be repaired before the school begins.
I've been by. It's already done. That's why I'm saying. It's like you've already done
Yeah.
this work, you know.
Yeah,
So,
but it's not part of what our capital improvement plan. Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Snipes? I am not seeing any, so
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one more comment on that. You notice a lot of red on the last screen, and as Mr. Snipes said, all of those items were taken out of the budget, but they will come back again through the CIP committee to the board again to be put into our school division CIP again because they are needed and part of our maintenance cycle. The Board of Supervisors did not put them within the 5-year plan at all, so we're not sure where the funding will be for the projects in red.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to 7.01, review revisions to Student Code of Conduct, or policy, JFC Student Code of
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening we want to bring to you for consideration some changes to policy JFC, and Dr. Keever is going to present those this evening. As you're probably aware, they're of the Governor Youngkin's Executive Order 33 pertaining to cell phones, and this is some of our administrative recommendations and then asking for the board direction on some things as well. Thank you, Dr. Keever.
Thank you. Good evening. As Dr. Herron mentioned, on July 9th, Governor Youngkin released Executive Order 33 to establish a cell phone-free education to promote the health and safety of Virginia K-12 students. Incidentally, as a school board, you had approved our Code of Student Conduct, this actual policy, on May 21st, 2024. It's a tad bit unusual for us to bring this back to you so quickly, but I'm going to try to walk through the rationale for that. A couple things that I think it's important for the board to recognize, and also our community that may be listening. Some of the items cited in the executive order included that teens, those students generally in middle school and high school, spend approximately 4.8 hours on social media. That many teens report, and it's been measured, that they receive over 237 notifications during a day. And some teens even maybe 4,000 notifications in a day. There have been studies to suggest that 3+ hours or more on social media doubles the risk for mental health challenges, to include symptoms of depression and anxiety. The release of the executive order, we felt like, as an organization, gave us an impetus to really look carefully at Policy JFC. We believe that Policy JFC currently is in line with that executive order, but we also wanted to potentially remove some ambiguity from the policy and to strengthen our practices as well. Additionally, the executive order laid out the idea that the Virginia Department of Education would conduct listening sessions across the Commonwealth. I believe those have just about concluded. Several of us from WJCC administration attended the one in Virginia Beach back in July. By the 15th of August, the Virginia Department of Education will provide initial guidance relative to policies and procedures around creating a cell-free educational environment. By the 16th of September, those guidance documents will be finalized, and then school divisions, school boards have until January 1, 2025 to make revisions to policy and procedures in accordance with the guidance. As administrators and as your administrative team working with principals, we believe that a proactive stance and approach is most appropriate with addressing the executive order. And we are going to encourage our students and parents to find their focus in the coming year. And find your focus is a phrase that you will hear more of as we begin to share with the community our plans in order to strengthen the opportunity for students to have a cell-free educational environment within schools. So let me direct you, if I could, to the policy document itself, which is included for you in board docs. And I really want to start on line 128, which is where the policy itself picks up around cell phones and electronic devices. We are recommending the addition in green of lines 141 and 144. We want to reference policy JFG, search and seizure, as well as the definition of electronic devices to include artificial intelligence assisted devices. We are recommending that our policy as a school division not be differentiated between K-8 and 9-12, but in fact we have a K-12 policy, and that policy that we're recommending would indicate that all personally owned cell phones and electronic devices must be turned off and stowed away at all times unless utilized for those instructional purposes authorized by school personnel. Students may possess these devices on school grounds provided they are not visible and not activated, meaning they need to be completely powered down and off during the school day. The power on these devices must be turned off before entering the building, and leaving the device on vibrate, silent, or with the ringer off is not permitted. So a couple items in green there, taking it from K-8 to K-12, adding language in around completely powering it off, and then deleting or eliminating the grades 9 through 12 because it would be a collective K-12 policy for us. We have worked over the last 3 weeks, and grant you the executive order was released about a month ago, and as we talked with principals, it became clear administratively that there was a desire for us to take a stronger approach on day one of school, not necessarily to wait until all of the guidance was released from VDOE or even the January 1st deadline, but to go ahead and signal to our community, especially our students, that we intend for the educational environment in school to be cell phone free. We believe that this policy adjustment will allow that to occur, and our administrators are continuing to work together collaboratively to develop consistent procedures that would allow for this to happen day in and day out in our classrooms. There's a communication plan that we are putting together and hope to be able to, based on the dialogue tonight with the board, begin to share as early as this week with families that the board is considering this policy revision and that we as a school division will be positioned on August 26th to start that process in earnest, where we will have our students powering down their phones and putting them away before heading into school for the day. Let me pause there and see if I can answer questions.
Mrs. Hundley?
My first question is, what are we doing about the earbuds? Does that mean earbuds are also?
That means earbuds are going to fall into the device category for us, and earbuds would need to come out and be stowed away as well.
Okay, and what are the consequences as far as if a child has the cell phone out and a teacher asks for it, confiscating? Like, what are the consequences for that, being that the cell phone does not belong to the school, it belongs
Sure.
to the parent?
We are in the process of working through those guidelines. We have an initial draft where there are 3 or 4 levels. Level 1 would be a verbal warning, a parent contact, and potentially that device is confiscated by the administrator and provided back to the student at the end of the day. Level 2 becomes a little bit more restrictive. The parent has to retrieve the phone on the second instance. The parent and administrators need to have a conversation about what happens the third time. Third time would be potentially that the student has to check his or her phone in at the school main office at the beginning of the day. And then the fourth time, if it's taken us 4 times to help you understand what our expectation is, then you would lose your ability to bring that to school for the remainder of the semester.
And
If I can interject with that as well, what we are very careful in all of this is we don't want teachers confronting students or taking cell phones off them. If a cell phone was being used in a classroom and distracting from the instructional process, the teacher would write the referral and the administrator will actually have the interaction with the student. So we're not asking teachers to spend their day taking cell phones, but just simply to write a referral, give it to administration, and then administration will follow up, because we want teachers to be able to teach and not be trying to work with cell phones in the classroom. So that's just one thing, Mr. Allen.
No, I agree, and I think part of our effort at communicating with administrators and teachers is how we will apply this consistently. Dr. Brown in Student Services and working with Dr. Worley and Mr. Walker are developing a standardized presentation that we will use with all school staffs to explain here's how we're going to approach it and where we need your help as a staff member in order to get that accomplished. And then in a parallel fashion, we'll be communicating with families what the expectation is and where we need their help as we help students find their focus.
Okay, and 2 small things. What about smartwatches? Are they considered in the cell phone
We
family?
Sure. Our current policy now has smartwatches as a part of those electronic devices, and so technically they would need to be turned off and stowed as well.
Okay, and do we have children that do need a cell phone for medical reasons, so they will just have a waiver of some sort?
We do. We're working on an exemption process.
Okay.
That process will flow through the nurse's office and then be coordinated centrally by our supervisor of health services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there currently, are cell phones used for the hall pass system?
Yes, they are used for the hall pass system.
We'll have to have a new.
However, I do believe the laptops can be used, Dr. Worley, for that process. You want to speak?
Yes, they can use the laptops for the hall pass, and actually some schools were already doing that last year to avoid the use of the cell phone, and that will be the plan moving forward.
Mr. Riffle?
Could you go through those steps again? The Sorry.
Sure. And again, we are really working as hard as we can on the guidelines. So what I'm sharing with you right now is what we think the initial steps are. The first interaction would be the device would be taken by the administrator until the end of the instructional day and then returned to the student. But there would also be a specific conversation between the parent and administrator with regard to the violation. The second would be that the parent would have to retrieve the phone. The third would be that the student would need to check that phone in on a daily basis with administration. So I would walk in and see Miss Hunley in the main office and give Miss Hunley my phone, and I could retrieve that at the end of the day. And if there were a fourth violation, that's when you would lose permission for the rest of the semester.
So one point in that, obviously, we don't want to suspend a student for something like this. The outcome will be losing the privilege of having your cell phone in the building with you, ultimately.
Just have one quick question. It sounds like you guys are really organized. Thank you for that. I'm just kind of curious, when day one hits, there's going to be some turmoil. So is there going to be like a period of time where it all kind of gets, okay, we're going to be really, to your point, where you want to be, but
Grace period.
realistically, there's going to be a short period, I would imagine.
I want to be very careful to not say that there will be a grace period. What I want to say is that it will take all of us working together in order to make this happen, and we start on day one. And that our goal in working through and with administrators and teachers is to build a level of understanding around consistency and approach, recognizing that we need parent support, we're going to need board support, and that we as central office administrators will also need to be providing support in terms of working through some of those challenges that maybe we haven't anticipated.
No, and I think it's admirable, really so. But I do think that maybe the mailbox wasn't there, or some reason or another they just didn't get the word.
Which I understand, but we're going to try just about every communication method we can with families in order to make it clear, which is part of the reason we're starting that dialogue tonight, so that we can come back around tomorrow, this week, and then at the school level, school administrative teams and teachers will be sharing the same information. In that first week of school, building to building, administrative teams hold sessions with students around behavioral expectations and discipline expectations. You can be assured that that will be a feature of those assemblies and conversations at the building level in that first week of school.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
So I know I have two questions over here. I just want to check in briefly with Mrs. Donner and Mr. Hosang. No?
I just have one quick question. Regarding the executive order, is that going to be part of the legal references for this policy?
Perhaps, Mr. Hosang. Right now, it's not. I don't think it's listed as a legal reference.
It's not. That's why I was asking, just to make sure, since that's sort of the impetus of why we're doing this.
Well, part of our discussion as an administrative group is that we felt our current policy allows for there to be a cell phone free instructional environment with the exception of when an administrator or teacher gives permission. We're trying to bolster that. We could look at including the executive order as a reference point. My one concern is in some of our other policy pieces, we haven't necessarily linked back to an executive order. So I would probably want to talk a little bit with our legal counsel between now and when we get together again about the idea of including that as a reference. Does that make sense?
Good? You good, Mr. Hosang?
Yes, thank you.
If I could also add to that, Madam Chair, the executive order from Governor Youngkin does allow some flexibility at the local school board level. And so we are stepping out ahead to really try to make a difference for our students in this area following the executive order. But there is some flexibility in that. We don't know what the Virginia Department of Education guidelines will include right now. And so we will need to come back to the board if there are significant changes that we haven't anticipated. But it's difficult to wait until mid-September because we want to start something on day one, not 3 weeks later. Mm-hmm. So administratively, we want to push ahead and do what we feel is best for students following the executive order.
Okay, I know we had Mr. Riffle and then Mrs. Henley, and I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I just like to get back to the steps that I know they're not out here, but that's why I wanted them reiterated for the questions I had. I think we're going to get to step 3 pretty quickly for most students. I think, is there like some discussion, I don't know if this is a solution, but like when I was in school, when bring your own device was like hot and new and fun, and we bring them out and use them and stuff like that, are we going to have we had a phone jail, so they call it,
Yeah.
and each of the, instead of like having, because I think it's become very burdensome for our principals, at least in the first semester, of like, we're going to get to step 3, and then I'm going to get an angry parent, number 4, and we're going to keep hearing it over and over again. And that's just the reality where we are. When this is a thing, we're like, oh, we're done with the device. It goes in phone jail or whatever. You can still see it. My monkey brain was happy at the time. So then I got it back after I left and went to the next class and phone jail again,
Right.
And that's just kind of like, I know it's a little weird, but that's like, we're getting to a spot where we're talking about someone else's property in our building, and like, I know that's like the whole concern. I just think there might be I know it sounds dumb and it's like a shorter type solution, but it is kind of, I felt like it was a pretty good solution for what we dealt with. And it was like, we actually just used like the calculator things. I don't know how much we used calculator jails or wherever they were before, but I just thought it was something, when I was in school, and I thought it was decent in middle school, and then in high school we were allowed to have iPads and all other stuff, so they didn't fit in the jail anymore. But I just would bring it I know this is part of your discussion, and I think
Sure.
it's a great place for you to talk about it to us. And
Well, and I will say that the principals, when first reviewing the executive order, had several different thoughts on the best way to approach. We are talking about centrally providing something for main offices to have as that secure cell phone caddy if a student gets to level 3 or quickly.
Sure.
But as we talked in terms of the idea of classroom to classroom, we were, I think, attempting to eliminate the potential for inconsistency room to room by saying that the expectation across the board is that they're off and away, that I don't have to worry about in room 102 being different than room 103 because we're all doing the same thing, and then we're putting the impetus back on the student to be responsible for his or her property until it's been a repeated violation.
Sure.
If I could add just one more thing, we looked at many other ways of doing this in other school divisions. There's talk about pouches and putting things on walls. And we really felt because it is the students' and families' property that it should remain in the bag of the student. And so we're going from that angle first. Plus the research that was done on that we found was not effective.
Sure, and that's actually what I would like to close my remarks on, is like, that actually is pretty inconclusive data that actually being useful in school, and actually is probably more distracting than useful. And I do think the bag is the best way to go about this. I think the turning off the device thing may be the real problem we're getting into here, is like the actual actions that come to the steps, but this is the part I think all members of the board will agree, and any of the staff will be excited about, is like, we will get through this hard part of getting this down and done, but we will become a succeeding division when it comes to results and our students achieving, because we have less distractions in class. So I'm all for it. I think this is a good step. I think it's definitely a hard, fast-moving step, but I think it's very necessary for what will come in 6 months anyway. So.
Yep, appreciate your comments because this will be extremely challenging, but very important to see through.
Thank you.
Mrs. Henley?
Yes, last thing. On the buses, what are the recommendations? They stay in backpacks? Because I know you're not supposed to have projectiles out, but we do have some occurrences with pictures being taken on the buses. And so is that after school hours, so we aren't really responsible then for them?
Right now, the cell phones are available to be accessed by students on the ride to and from school. Where we are not suggesting that not be the case.
All right, thank you.
And we also, with extracurricular activities, there's safety issues, there's contacts with parents who are maybe picking them up at school after the school day. I think the executive order really speaks to the instructional piece of the day, and that's where we're most focused because we want the focus to be on instruction.
I just wanted that clarified.
Yep. Okay, any last, Mr. Riffle, you have another one?
I'm moving to the safety category. I think it's where a lot of parents' minds go, is like, how can they contact their sleep baby while they're at school, right? Like, that's kind of the thing I've heard all the time since this come out, is like, how will I talk to little Jimmy? And I'm like, this is the part where I think our division says, we take care of our students when they're in our presence, right? Like, we have this, we do a good job at this. And I just want to least give a comment to you all. I'm trying to like tee it up for you, Doctor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Revell. I think one of the safety and security is so important to us. And so if we keep the cell phone and still in the student's possession, if we were put into a challenging situation with regard to safety, students and staff would still have access to their cell phones. And so we're trying to find that balance with the focus on instruction, but still having the safety in place.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from the screen? Nope. Good to go. I'm excited about this. I know that I don't know if it was this board. I honestly can't remember, but the previous board, we wanted to do K through 12 last year. So I think this will be, like you said, a challenge. But if we're all messaging and pulling together, it's going to make a significant
I have a
difference.
procedural question. Is this like something we will
vote on it.
we'll vote on it, like not next meeting, but months from now, right? This is a work in progress, right?
We would like for you to approve our recommended policy change, which makes it a K-12 policy at the August 20th meeting.
Okay.
I think I have the date right. We're going to start on day one, working to implement and enforce that. If there are other recommendations that come from the VDOE guidance released in August or later in September, and we need to make course corrections, we would bring back policy revisions to you in accordance with the January 1st deadline.
Gotcha. Thank you. Sorry, I should do that in the right place.
Okay. All right. I think that is it for now. So we will move on to 8, our consent agenda. And I will read those items quickly. 8.01, approval of minutes from our special call meeting on 6/27/24. 802, approval of minutes from the meeting on July 9th, 24. 8.03, approval of minutes from the school board retreat on 7/22/24. 804, approval of revisions to policy DA, management of funds. 8.05, approval of revisions to policy IGBA, individualized education programs for students with disabilities. Item 8.06, approval of creation of policy AG literacy plan. 8.07, approval of revisions to policy IA, instructional goals and objectives. 8.08, approval of creation of policy IGBD, programs for students with reading deficiencies. 8.09, approval of creation of policy IKH, retaking SOL assessments. 8.10, approval of revisions to policy IKA, grading systems. And 8.11, approval of revisions to policy IKB, homework. Can I get a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hundley.
Mr. Riffle,
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos,
Aye.
Mrs. Donner,
Aye.
Mr. Hosang,
Aye.
Mrs. Hundley,
Aye.
and Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. Okay, then we will move on to our individual action items. 9.01, approval of personnel actions. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve personal actions as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hundley. Ms. Aller?
Mr. Riffle,
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos,
Aye.
Mrs. Donner,
Aye.
Mr. Hosang,
Aye.
Mrs. Hundley,
Aye.
and Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. 9.02, approval of award of contract for the design services at Matthew Whaley HVAC replacement. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the award of contract for request for proposal number 2024-1209, design services for Matthew Whaley Elementary School HVAC replacement to Mosley Architects in the amount not to exceed $308,932.
Thank you, Mrs. Hundley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
Mrs. Hundley,
Aye.
Mr. Riffle,
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos,
Aye.
Mrs. Donner,
Aye.
Mr. Hosang,
Aye.
and Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. 9.03, approval of authorization of signatures in the absence of the superintendent. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the authorization of Renee Ewing, Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Daniel Keever, Deputy Superintendent, and Mr. Sean Walker, Assistant Superintendent of School Leadership, to sign State Department of Education documents in the absence of the superintendent through August 15, 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
And Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. 9.04, approval of tuition rates for non-resident students for 2024-25.
Madam Chair, I move to approve tuition rates for non-resident students for 2024-2025 school year as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
And Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. 9.05, approval of request to purchase 10 school buses. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the purchase request for 10 school buses from Sony, Merriman Incorporated, under the state contract number E19490,742 in the amount of $534,986.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
And Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. And last but not least, 9.06, approval of revisions to policy JN Appendix, student fee schedule for new school year. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve revisions to policy JN Appendix, student fee schedule for school year 2024-2025 as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
Mrs. Hunley.
Aye.
Mr. Riffle.
Aye.
Dr. Cavazos.
Aye.
Mrs. Donner.
Aye.
Mr. Hosang.
Aye.
And Mrs. Ortego.
Aye. All right. Well, we sped through. We will, we're at board member comments. I'm going to start with our, well, maybe I won't because she usually goes second to last. I'll start with you, Dr. Cavazos.
I quite honestly, I don't really have any comments tonight, other than the fact that I'm really impressed with the rapidity and how would you say expediency that the division has exercised in getting the cell phone ban approved. I mean, that's a huge cultural change, and it seems like the folks have put a lot of effort to that and given it an awful lot of thought.
Mr. Riffle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I start with a funny anecdote, I guess. I had a friend visiting Williamsburg maybe a couple weekends ago now. We were driving by Matthew Whaley, and we both went to Chesapeake Public Schools, which is no knock to Chesapeake Schools, but I'm about to say. I just think it's something I recognize when I'm showing my friend around town, that I think the people in our division, well, I'll start with the story. So, like, we drove past it, and he was like, "Bro, is that Hogwarts?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, I was like, "That's Matthew Wade, that's our elementary school, or one of them, you know." And he was like, "That's crazy." Yeah, because you can see it from like the weird backside. It's like a big field and a nice brick building. Then we drove past. We went to tennis, played some tennis. Then we drove past central office and saw James Blair. And he was like, is that a middle school or high school?" Like, he thought it was like some college readiness place, you know. And it's like, and I think it's something that I didn't really recognize, you know, because like I'm so used to seeing these facilities and stuff. But it's something that like we should really take pride in our division, as like we are doing a lot of hard work. We have great facilities for our students. People who are outside of our community may not know this stuff, right? We are competing at a level, you know, for personnel, for academics, right? Like at a high caliber. And it was just nice to, I don't know, hear from somebody else, and like it was kind of jokingly, right? But also kind of like, this is a privilege we have. Right? We have done a lot of hard work here, and so it's a testament to the people in the room. It's people who've come before us for those type of decisions, and it's something I'm excited about with the pre-K facilities and stuff. So I think we do great work here, and we have great places that you can even see from the outside. So that's awesome. In that same note, I don't know how. I know everyone's super excited for this, but Ms. Huntley and I are hosting a conversation on education. It's like a town hall, like a roundtable type thing. We'll kind of explain a little bit about what it means to be a board member. I think that's something that I think our community and I think we haven't really checked in a minute. That's kind of more of a public-facing thing. That's more conversational. We will have some ground rules. It won't be like a free-for-all, like come yell at Kim and I. But it will be structured, it will have intention, and it will be something useful, I think, to the conversations we're having in our division about our strategic plan and where we are and some other hot topic things. We are not answering questions. I think it's something I wanted to make clear, that we're not like taking a Q&A and like speaking for the board in any certain way or taking a certain action like this is how we're going to vote on certain things. It's not how this is. We just want to hear from our community on how things are going and like really hear from parents and teachers and students alike. And I really encourage the student aspect. As much as I want to hear from mom and dad, I really want to hear from our young people, our people who are really doing, dealing with the cell phone policy, dealing with these things day to day, riding the bus, going to bathrooms. That's stuff that matters to me. And I only hear from that in the SEAC committee, and it's only like because I like press them for it. It's not really like a time where we're supposed to use that either. But I think it's something that we have talked about, and I think the other levels of government here have been really searching for, and I think it's something that if it goes well, we'd like to continue doing something like this with a rotation of board members and stuff. But so I'll at least talk with information so you can come if you're just tuning in this one episode. So it's a conversation on education with Kim and I, or Ms. Hunley and I, on August 19th from 5 to 7 in the Maximum Building in a conference room. You can RSVP you can send it to our official school board emails and stuff, but we try to keep it a little bit outside of that because we got this donated. The room was donated to us. It wasn't like we paid for it through like any fund. So we just try to use some community partnerships here to get this stuff going. Maybe we'll make it a regular thing, but I think it's something that our community needs, and we're happy to talk about our roles here and how it actually works to be a board member. It's not just like we just solve problems magically. Like I know Kim's a superhero when she was a kindergarten teacher, and it's a little tougher to be a school board member and like work from a higher level and really explain that to the public. And it's also different than campaigning and doing that to the world where I come from. So it's going to be a good place to kind of have like at least that conversation, like this is where this fits and how that works, and really explain it in a way that's like kind of comfortable and fun and not like, this is very clerical here and I have to wear a suit. So I will wear a suit here. But anyways, thank you for your time, Madam Chair. And I look forward to seeing our community come out for something like this.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle. Mrs. Hunley?
So Mr. Riffle and I have seen a lot of each other this summer. We also went to Virginia Peninsula Community College, the Toano Trade Center, and we actually had two former students that had just graduated, one from Lafayette and one from War Hill, that registered to take. One's going to go into the medical part, and the other was going to do carpentry, and his father was going to do it with him. So that was exciting. It's right in our backyard. It's affordable. And I hope more of our students take advantage of that. Then we also, pardon?
The 65-year-old thing.
Oh, he was 65, the dad.
No, you can take classes for free for over 65.
Oh, yeah, you can take classes for free for over 65.
Isn't that crazy? Sorry.
Well, that's okay. Get me straight. Also, we went and received the award for SHIP for the wonderful meals that the children prepared for the games that we had. Exceptional games, yes. So that was just an honor to go to Richmond and get that award on behalf of the school division. And then the graduation of the 27 students, summer graduations, I think their families were as hyped as the ones when we were at the Capitol Hall. I mean, wow, they were super excited. And the kids ran. I didn't show that video. I didn't post that one, but they ran out. There was no marching out when it was. One girl just bolted. So they were very happy. So anyway, I'm super proud of them. We've graduated them all. And then I did get to summer school. I did get to find out about the 14th goldfish, because I just had to find out why that novel was entitled that. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone that wants to read it, but it makes sense when you go there. Also, went to see the young children. They had the Olympics theme, and I've always been very impressed with Williamsburg Regional Library and what they do for our students with the STEM tables that the kids could come and play at and to get the free book. And wonderful things happen in summer school, and I know they'll be giving follow-ups to whoever to make it even more powerful next year. And then also then Coaches Night, we were able to go to that. Randy and Mr. Riffle, to the Coaches Night and for the sports that are starting. And I know that the coaches already know this, but these summers are hot, and we have to make sure our kids are hydrated out on the football fields or wherever they are, because every now and then you see it pops up on media, someone has some type of complication due to heat. So I'm sure that they talked about that, because we came and ate and heard the speaker, and then we left, but I'm sure they talked about that. And last, Real People Educating Others is having their back to school drive Saturday, August 24th from 10 to 1 at Lafayette High School. Please bring your children out for the backpacks full with goodies. They've always had great things like haircuts for students, and girls can get their little nails painted, and just gaming and food trucks and lots of vendor tables, lots of support to get the children ready and excited to get back into school. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Henley. You've had a very busy summer. Mr. Hosang.
Yes, I always hate going after Miss Hunley because she is so thorough in everything that she talks about. The two things I'm going to talk about, she's already mentioned. First, I want to congratulate the summer school graduates. It was great spending participating in their ceremony, and I agree that they were very enthusiastic with their diplomas, and so I wish nothing but the best for them moving forward. And I also want to talk about Coaches Night. It was great to see so many coaches coming out, willing to take their time to help expose students to what the meaning of teamwork is and making lifelong friendships. Being a former athlete, I know the work that goes into it. I know what it takes to try to make these individuals, these students, a team. And so I just want to tip my hat to all the coaches for all the work that they do in helping the students in an extracurricular activity. And that's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hosang. Mrs. Donner?
Thank you. I also echo congratulations to all of our summer school graduates. And I just love that our colleagues are out and about, continuing to represent the school division. And 20 days left till we start school back, so really excited. I've heard some kids that are actually looking forward to going back to school, so I think it's a testament to the environment that we create where they're eager to get back to their teachers and their friends and the social community that they have in schools. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Donner. I won't repeat anything that's been said. I can't believe we're heading back to school already. Summer does go fast. I want to just mention briefly, I greatly enjoyed our school board retreat that we had a couple weeks ago. We had the opportunity to really delve into the next phase of our strategic plan, which we've been wanting to do for a while. So that's still in the works, but we had a really great conversation, and we don't often get to sit around together and talk and brainstorm and ask questions, and so it was very positive and very good teamwork on that day. So I was grateful for that opportunity. And yeah, I just hope everyone enjoys these last few weeks of summer while we still have them, and stay healthy and safe. And until next time, I will read upcoming events. Division Launch Day, 8/13/24 at 8:30 a.m. at War Hill High School. The Policy Committee will meet on August 21st at 8:30 a.m. in room 203 of the School Board and Central Office. And WJCC convocation takes place on August 23rd at 9 a.m. in James Blair Middle School Library. And our next meeting is on August 20th. Closed session begins at 5 p.m. in room 300, the annex of the school board central office. Regular meeting will follow at 6:30 p.m. James Blair Middle School Gymnasium. And then in September, our closed session will begin on September 3rd at 4 p.m. in room 300 of the annex. And the work session and action items will follow also on the 3rd at 4:30 p.m. room 300 of the annex. Agenda items are set for our next meeting. And with that, we are adjourned.